Imagine it's 1989, you're a young artist, obsessed with sci-fi movies. You dream of bringing a dinosaur to life on your computer screen, or a spaceship that actually floats in space. But to even make a simple 3D model back then, what did you need to do? You had to use silicon graphics workstations, huge machines, almost as big as a refrigerator. The price? Between $40,000 and $100,000. That's about the cost of a small house in many cities. And that's just the hardware. You also needed software like Alias Power Animator or Wavefront. Each license cost tens of thousands of dollars more. Only big Hollywood studios, car companies, and a few very rich universities could afford these tools. Regular people, they didn't even dream of it. Now imagine trying to do 3D on a normal PC, a 386 or 486 computer with just 8 megabytes of RAM. Yes, megabytes, not gigabytes. The operating system? Pure DOS. No fancy graphical interface. Modeling? All done with commands and numbers. Rendering? Even a simple scene? Sometimes it took hours on a machine whose fan sounded like a jet engine. Back then, 3D was mostly for short commercials, TV elements, or early movie effects. Even the first dinosaurs in Jurassic Park were built on those GI workstations. So here's the big question. How did 3D go from a luxury tool costing hundreds of thousands of dollars to something millions of people today can use on a regular laptop at home every single day? This is the story of 3ds Max, a story that changed everything. Section 1, the birth of 3D Studio for DOS. Now, let's go back to 1990. Halloween, October 31, 1990. A very small 4-person team called Yost Group released something that would change the history of 3D forever. The main team members were Gary Yost, the visionary and project manager, Tom Hudson, lead programmer and creator of the initial prototype, which he had been working on since 1988, Jack Powell, and shortly after, Dan Silver, the person who seriously brought animation into the software. So what was the software called? 3D Studio, the very first version for DOS. Here's an important point. Autodesk was only the publisher. The software itself was built by Yost Group, and Autodesk helped it reach a much larger market. How much did it cost? $3,495. Compared to silicon graphics workstations, which were priced anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, this was nothing short of a miracle. For the first time, a complete and integrated software for modeling, materials, rendering, and even animation was available on a standard PC. No more need to rely on giant SGI machines. A 386 or 486 PC with just 8 to 16 megabytes of RAM was enough. But here's a critical question. Why was the software designed to be modular? This is very important. DOS had a terrible limitation: 640 kilobytes of conventional memory. The entire usable memory for a program was just 640 kilobytes. If all the tools, modeling, materials, animation, and rendering were packed into a single large program, it either wouldn't run or it would crash constantly. So the Yost Group had to split the software into separate modules. 4 independent modules, each running on its own. 2D Shaper. Here you design 2D shapes using splines and Boolean operations. It was basically like a simple vector editor. 3D Lofter. This module converted your 2D shapes into 3D forms, extruding or lofting a profile into a solid, for example. 3D Editor, the heart of the software. This is where you built and edited the final model, set up lights and cameras, and prepared the scene for rendering. Material Editor. Here you created materials and textures and applied them to your objects. The Keyframer animation tool in the first release was very limited, but by release 2 and 3, it became much more capable, thanks largely to Dan Silver's work. So how did it all work? You built your model in Shaper, saved it, moved to Lofter, saved again, then to Editor. Every step required saving the file and loading it in the next module separately. It was cumbersome, it was slow, but it worked, and it ran on hardware that no one had imagined could handle serious 3D work. Despite all these limitations, 3D Studio was the first truly integrated 3D software on a PC. The renders were impressive for their time, animations were simple but functional. Most importantly, the user community grew fast. Thousands of independent artists, small ad studios, students, and even gamers could finally create real 3D content. This software laid the foundation for what we now know as 3ds Max. But there was still a big problem. Everything ran on DOS, and the world was quickly moving toward Windows. And the next chapter starts right here. Section 2, Autodesk steps in and the birth of 3ds Max. Now, let's move to 1995 and 1996. The world was changing. DOS was slowly fading away, and Windows 95 and Windows NT were taking over. The Yoast Group, the same team that built 3D Studio for DOS, decided it was time for a big move, a complete rewrite of the software from scratch, this time for the 32-bit Windows NT platform. The result? A completely new software. No longer just 3D Studio, it became 3D Studio Max. The first version, codenamed Jaguar, was released in April 1996. Some sources say spring 1996. The publisher was Kinetics, a new Autodesk division created that year for media and entertainment products. At this stage, the Yoast Group was still the main developer, but Autodesk was taking more control over the project. And this version was truly revolutionary. The first big change, a real Windows GUI. No more command lines or switching between modules. Everything was inside a single integrated environment. The second change, a real-time viewport. You could rotate the model, see textures, play animations, and watch changes live. But the most important innovation, the Modifier Stack. The very first version of Max introduced the Modifier Stack, one of the biggest shifts in 3D modeling history. Before that, modeling was almost always destructive. What does that mean? If you applied a bend or twist to a model, the change was baked directly into the geometry. If you later changed your mind, you had to either undo step by step or basically start over from scratch. The Modifier Stack changed everything. Modeling became non-destructive and largely procedural. You could create a box, apply a bend, then a twist, then an edit poly. You could even reorder the modifiers. For example, apply twist first, then bend, or the other way around. You could temporarily turn any modifier on or off without affecting the base model. The full history was preserved. At any moment, you could go back to any stage. And if you wanted, you could eventually collapse the stack, but most of the time, it wasn't even necessary. For ArchViz and hard surface modeling, like buildings, furniture, and industrial objects, this system was a huge leap forward. You could quickly test ideas, make major changes, and move the project forward without starting over. Even today, in 2026, the Modifier Stack remains one of the most powerful features of 3ds Max. Tools like geometry nodes in Blender are very powerful, but the Modifier Stack, thanks to its simplicity, speed, and directness, is still unmatched for many static and architectural workflows. But Autodesk's story didn't stop there. Starting with Release 2, R2, codenamed Athena, in 1997, Autodesk essentially took full control of the product and continued development in-house. The Yoast Group was no longer directly involved. And this is when 3D Studio Max truly became Autodesk 3ds Max, setting it on the path to becoming one of the industry standards for architecture, game development, and visual effects. And that was just the beginning. Section 3, why 3ds Max became so popular. Now that 3ds Max was born in 1996, why did it become one of the most popular 3D tools in the world in the following decades? Especially in architecture and visualization, where it still plays a dominant role. Let's break down the reasons step by step. Reason 1, accessibility and lighter requirements compared to competitors, especially until the early 2000s. Back then, software like Maya, Soft Image, and Lightwave was powerful, but heavier, more complex, and dependent on high-end hardware. In contrast, 3ds Max ran on more standard PCs, its user interface was easier to understand, and initial modeling was faster. For small studios, freelancers, and independent artists, this was a decisive advantage. The Modifier Stack and fast polygonal modeling. The same system, introduced in the very first version, became a strategic advantage for architecture. In ArchViz, work is usually iterative, ceiling heights change, windows move, materials are tested, lighting gets adjusted. The Modifier Stack allowed you to make these changes without losing your base model, test ideas, and revert if needed. For hard surface modeling, like buildings, furniture, or industrial elements, this was an incredibly efficient tool, and it still is today. Reason 3, the rise of ArchViz in the 2000s. In the early 2000s, computers got faster, monitors improved, and architects began presenting their projects with photorealistic renders. Instead of physical models or hand-drawn plans, it was all about photoreal images. 3ds Max was ready at just the right time, modeling, lighting, materials, and rendering, all in a single PC platform. Many leading studios in Europe, the US, and Asia built their pipelines around Max. And once a pipeline is established, it's hard to change. Reason 4, a powerful plugin ecosystem. From the very early years, independent developers started creating plugins for Max, Forest Pack for scattering trees and plants, RailClone for repetitive elements like railings, facades, and flooring, Multiscatter, and dozens of other specialized tools. The key point is that many of these tools were initially made for Max and still perform best on Max today. This third-party ecosystem made Max hard to replace for large architectural projects. Reason 5, and perhaps the most important, Vray and later Corona. Vray, introduced by Chaos Group, became widely popular for 3ds Max in the early 2000s. A biased renderer, but fast, stable, and with strong global illumination. Vray set a new standard for photorealism in ArchViz, and for years, its best integration and focus was on Max. Later came Corona, simpler, with fewer settings, but equally high quality. The combination of Max with Vray or Corona effectively became an industry standard. But here's a critical point. Max's dominance in ArchViz wasn't just due to Autodesk's core innovations. In fact, a large part of Max's growth and vitality came from its third-party ecosystem, plugins, renderers, and the developer community. Autodesk often focused on maintenance and incremental improvements, but the community around Max kept it alive, competitive, and leading. In simple terms, Max plus Vray or Corona plus specialized architectural plugins created an almost unbeatable combination. And that's exactly why, even in 2026, 3ds Max remains one of the main tools for ArchViz worldwide. Section 4, the golden age of Max, architecture, and VFX. Now we're entering a period that can truly be called the golden age of 3ds Max, from the early 2000s up until around 2010, and the truth is, its impact is still felt today. In the ArchViz world, Max almost had complete dominance. According to Rebus Farm's major 2024 survey, which collected over 1,000 votes from the global ArchViz community, 3ds Max still holds roughly 59% of the architectural modeling market. Interestingly, this number was about 58% in 2022, meaning it's even seen slight growth. This shows that despite the rise of Blender and other new tools, Max remains the top choice for a large portion of architecture professionals worldwide. Major studios across Europe, the US, Asia, and the Middle East have built their pipelines around Max. And there's a simple reason for that: speed, precise control, and excellent compatibility with powerful render engines. The arrival of Vray in the early 2000s, followed by Corona in 2015, changed the industry standard. Before Vray, scanline renders, or even mental ray, were decent but not truly photorealistic. Vray, with its fast global illumination, accurate physical materials, and realistic lighting, took architectural render quality to the next level. Corona, with a simpler workflow and fewer settings, but comparable quality, quickly became a popular choice. And the key point is, most of the integration and optimization for both render engines was done for 3ds Max. In the gaming industry, Max also played a significant role, especially in environment modeling and creating static assets. Many early 2000s games used Max to build buildings, vehicles, props, and even some cutscenes. It was fast for hard surface modeling, and exporting to early game engines was relatively straightforward. However, in cinema and heavy VFX, Max was less dominant. In Hollywood, Maya became the standard for character rigging, complex animation, and simulations like cloth, fluids, and particles. Later on, Houdini entered the scene for more advanced visual effects. Max was mostly used for environment creation and prop modeling, but for main characters and advanced VFX, Maya was the go-to choice. Here's an important analysis. Why did Max gain more traction in architecture than in cinema? First, the Modifier Stack was designed specifically for iterative architectural work, quickly adjusting building heights, moving openings, testing different materials, all without destroying the base model. Second, specialized ArchViz plugins. Forest Pack for scattering vegetation, RailClone for repetitive elements like facades and railings, Multiscatter and similar tools. Almost all of these were first developed for Max, and they still perform best on Max. In contrast, Maya was built from the ground up with a focus on character animation and a node-based workflow, which is better suited for complex cinema and VFX pipelines. So, in simple terms, Max, combined with its specialized architecture ecosystem, created an almost unbeatable combination. And that's exactly why, even in 2026, the golden age of Max isn't over. A large portion of serious architectural projects worldwide are still built using 3D's Max. Thank you for staying with us so far. If this is your first time visiting my channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button and turning on the notification bell to join us on this learning journey, and make sure you never miss a video. By leaving a like and comment, you're not only showing your support, but also helping us create even better content for you and the ArchViz community. Share your experiences with 3Ds Max, your excitement, challenges, or any interesting memories. And finally, a special thank you to everyone who, through likes, comments, shares, and donations, gives us the motivation and energy to keep going. Section 5, the 2026 ecosystem, why many still don't leave Max behind. Now let's jump to 2026. Despite serious advancements in Blender, the power of Houdini, and the rise of real-time tools like Unreal, why do so many professional ArchViz studios still can't let go of 3Ds Max? The answer can be summed up in one word: ecosystem. The first factor, specialized architectural plugins that still give Max a major advantage. Forest Pack from i2 Software, probably the most popular scattering tool in architectural projects, for distributing trees, plants, rocks, crowds, or anything that requires natural-looking distribution. In large urban or landscape projects, it's practically an industry standard. Then there's RailClone, a powerful parametric system for creating repetitive elements. Facades, railings, flooring, modular walls, windows, all with high speed and precise control, and multi-scatter for massive scenes, compatible with Vray, Corona, Arnold, and other render engines. The key point is, these tools were originally built for Max, received the most optimization on Max, and still don't have a full direct replacement in large architectural projects. Many studios openly admit, without Forest Pack and RailClone, our pipeline just isn't complete. The second factor, renderers. Vray and Corona, both from Chaos, are still considered the gold standard for photorealism in architecture. Their deep integration with Max makes adjusting lighting, materials, and GI fast, stable, and predictable. In practice, many studios say that interior and exterior renders using the Max plus Vray or Corona combination remain the most reliable option. But the full picture is more nuanced. Blender has made serious progress. Geometry Nodes is a powerful procedural system. The asset browser has become stronger. Add-ons like Geoscatter can replicate some Forest Pack features. And most importantly, it's free. For freelancers and small studios, this is a significant advantage. So why hasn't there been a widespread migration? It's not just about the software. It's about years of investment in time and digital assets. Studios have thousands of ready-made assets, material and object libraries built over years, archived projects, teams that have been trained, pipelines that have been tested and optimized. Migrating means rebuilding assets, retraining the team, testing a new pipeline for errors, and accepting risk. According to recent ArchViz community surveys, Max still holds the dominant market share, not just because of its features, but because the cost of change is high. In simple terms, Max is not just a piece of software. It's a full, mature ecosystem that has had years of investment. And as long as professional ArchViz requires speed, precision, and specialized tools, many either can't or simply won't let go of it. Section 6, competing with Maya, Cinema, 4D, and Blender. Now let's do a real comparison, no emotions involved. The question isn't which software is the best. We're not here to declare a winner. We want to examine design philosophies, strengths, and market share based on 2024, 2026 data like Rebus Farm surveys and CG industry reports. First, design philosophy. 3ds Max is built around the Modifier Stack, a procedural, history-based system. This means you can add modifiers layer by layer, change their order, toggle them on or off, and keep the full history of the model. For hard surface modeling, like buildings, furniture, or vehicles, this system works exceptionally well. Simple, fast, and direct, especially for architectural projects that require constant iterative changes. In contrast, Maya works with a dependency graph and a fully node-based structure. Here, flexibility is key. For complex rigging, character animation, cloth, fluids, particles, and dynamic VFX, Maya is still an industry standard in film. Nodes allow highly customized workflows, but naturally learning and managing this system is more complex, especially on heavy character projects. Cinema 4D takes a different approach. User-friendly and intuitive, MoGraph tools like Cloner, Effector, and Deformer make it nearly unmatched for motion graphics. If your focus is fast-paced advertising, promos, or motion design, Cinema 4D is designed specifically for that market, not for complex cinematic rigging. And then there's Blender, a true all-in-one software with a modern node-based approach. With geometry nodes, its procedural power has grown significantly, a flexible system that lets you build complex structures. On top of that, Blender is free, open source, and its development speed has been remarkable since 2018. From modeling and sculpting to animation, simulation, rendering with cycles and Eevee, and even video editing, everything is included. Now, let's look at the market. In ArchViz, 3ds Max is still dominant. According to a Rebus Farm survey in December 2024, with over 1,000 votes, Max held roughly 59% market share within this community. Blender is growing from about 4% in 2022 to 8% in 2024, and is expected to reach 10-15% by 2026. However, its plugin ecosystem and renderers like Vray and Corona still give Max a major advantage. In the film and VFX industry, Maya remains dominant. It holds about 40 of 43% market share in professional VFX projects, according to 2024 or 2025 reports. Maya remains the standard for rigging and animation, while Houdini offers more power for advanced effects. Max and Blender are present but have smaller shares. In the gaming and indie development sector, the story is different. Blender has seen significant growth. Some reports indicate 15-20% or more in freelance and indie game development. Its full free access and comprehensive toolset have attracted many small teams. Max is still strong in environment modeling and asset creation, especially with Unreal integration, but Blender is steadily gaining more share. So, the key question, why did Blender change the game? Completely free, geometry nodes and a powerful procedural system, rapid development since version 2.8, backed by a very active open source community. As a result, Blender has moved from a niche tool to a mainstream player, particularly in indie games, motion graphics, and even some small ArchViz projects. For large-scale ArchViz and professional pipelines, Max remains the top choice for many studios. Maya continues to be the industry standard for complex character animation and VFX, while Cinema 4D provides the best user experience for fast motion graphics and advertising work. Blender, on the other hand, is rapidly gaining share across multiple areas as a versatile, free, and future-ready tool. This competition clearly shows that there is no absolute best software. Each tool is optimized for a specific market and workflow, and today's CG industry is more multipolar and specialized than ever. This competition shows that there's no absolute best software. Each tool is optimized for a specific market and workflow, and today's CG industry is more multipolar and specialized than ever. Section 7, Weaknesses and Challenges of 3ds Max. So far, we've talked about the strengths of 3ds Max, especially in ArchViz, but no software is perfect. Now let's take an honest and analytical look at 3ds Max's challenges in 2026, the issues many professional users deal with daily, and exactly the reasons some have turned to Blender or Houdini. The first and perhaps most important challenge is heavy dependency on third-party plugins. The truth is, without tools like Forest Pack, RailClone, Multiscatter, Vray, or Corona, Max can feel almost incomplete for serious ArchViz projects. Its native scatter or distribution tools are weaker in comparison. If a studio tries to work without extra costs or plugin installation, Max quickly feels limiting. This dependency also means additional license costs and increased complexity in managing the pipeline, since everything must be updated and kept compatible simultaneously. In contrast, Blender, with geometry nodes and its internal tools, is gradually narrowing this gap. The second challenge is handling very heavy scenes. In large projects, like an entire city or massive landscaping with millions of polygons, Max still struggles with viewport lag, high RAM usage, and slow navigation, even on powerful hardware. Many users report that for scenes exceeding 10-20 million polygons, more manual proxying and optimization is required. Meanwhile, Blender's recent optimizations and Houdini's fully procedural workflow with smart caching provide greater flexibility in these situations. The third challenge is long-standing bugs and stability issues. Some older problems haven't been fully eliminated. For example, unstable undo and redo in complex scenes, occasional crashes when working with heavy modifiers or render engines, and import and export issues in certain versions, especially with FBX or Alembic. The fourth challenge, slower innovation compared to competitors. In recent years, Autodesk has focused more on maintenance and incremental improvements rather than revolutionary changes to the core software. Meanwhile, Blender introduces impressive new features every 6-12 months, such as advanced geometry nodes or EV Next, and Houdini deepens its procedural workflow with every release. Max's updates, however, have mostly been quality of life improvements. Enhancements like better retopology tools, the conform modifier, or OpenPBR are useful, but they don't represent a fundamental shift in the software's architecture. The final challenge, and perhaps the most emotional, subscription model. Since 2016, when Autodesk eliminated perpetual licenses and moved to a subscription-only model, some long-time users have been dissatisfied. Annual or monthly payments, especially for multi-user teams, create ongoing, significant costs. For some, it felt like they were now forced to pay continuously for software they've relied on for years. This was one of the main reasons for the early migration wave to Blender, which is free and has no financial commitment. 3ds Max remains a powerful tool, but dependency on plugins, performance challenges in heavy scenes, certain stability issues, and the subscription model have led some users, particularly freelancers and small studios, to look for alternatives. If Autodesk doesn't accelerate core innovation and strengthen internal tools, this competitive pressure could grow. Yet despite all these challenges, many still cannot let go of Max, because years of pipelines, asset libraries, and workflow habits are built around this ecosystem. Section 8, What's New in 3ds Max 2026. Now let's jump straight to 2026 and see exactly what 3ds Max 2026 brings. Released in March 2025, this version is more of an iterative quality of life update than a revolutionary overhaul. However, for daily users, especially in ArchViz and modeling, it's very practical and welcome. First major change, default material, OpenPBR. OpenPBR is now Max's default material. It's an open, physically based shading model developed by Autodesk in collaboration with Adobe. Benefits: better compatibility with Material X and OpenUSD, making it easier to transfer materials between Max, Maya, Substance, Unreal, and other tools. Intuitive control over real-world materials like rubber, glass, cement, and metal with ready-made presets. Full support for Arnold, standardizing studio pipelines and reducing the need for material remapping. Second, Vertex Weld Modifier now supports splines. Previously, it only worked on meshes. Now it can weld lines, curves, and imported text. Very useful for cleaning up vector shapes, fonts, or CAD imports without converting to mesh first. Third, retopology improvements. Reform algorithm in Retopology Tools V1 is faster with optimized mesh processing. Flow Retopology Cloud-based now offers up to 50 free jobs per month. This means you can convert complex meshes like scans or sculpts to clean, quad-based topology without slowing your system, all while working inside Max. Fourth, Conform Modifier and Array up to 40% faster. Conform for sticking a mesh to another surface, and Array for procedural repetition have been optimized. Boolean, displacement, and max fluids are also faster. This is great for ArchViz, as Array is often used for windows and columns, and Conform for aligning meshes to terrain and surfaces. Fifth, Arnold update. GPU toon shading for cartoon or non-photorealistic styles fast on GPU. Better transmission shadows for glass, more realistic transparent shadows with density control. Improved global light sampling for glossy materials, especially in scenes with many small lights. Cryptomate is now GPU compatible and more efficient, faster, easier compositing. Better USD support, and Material Switcher is now animated, allowing material changes over time. These updates mainly impact daily workflows, modifiers are faster, materials are more standardized, retopology is easier, and Arnold rendering is more powerful. For ArchViz and architectural modeling, this translates to less time and frustration in real projects. However, major innovations are still missing, like deep internal AI, fully node-based workflows for everything, or a procedural overhaul similar to Blender's geometry nodes. Autodesk is moving slowly and steadily, good for large studios with established pipelines, but possibly insufficient for those seeking major excitement or radical change. Overall, if you're working with Max, 2026 is worth the upgrade because these small but tangible improvements are truly felt in real-world projects. Section 9, 3ds Max today and its future. Now let's address the main question. In 2026, where exactly does 3ds Max stand in the market and what does its future look like? Current status. In ArchViz, Max is still the first choice and dominant software. According to a Rebus Farm survey in December 2024, with over 1,000 votes from the global ArchViz community, 3ds Max holds about 59% of the ArchViz modeling market, a slight increase from 58% in 2022. This means that even with Blender's growth, Max remains the industry standard for professional architectural projects. In VFX and film, Maya is dominant, about 40 or 43% market share in professional projects, according to CG Channel reports and 2025 trends. Max is mostly used for large environments and props. In gaming and indie development, Blender has grown significantly, around 15 to 32% in freelance and indie game development. Max is still strong in asset modeling and environment creation, especially with Unreal Engine integration, but Blender is gaining more ground, particularly among small studios. Current trends, ArchViz is relatively stable. Blender grew from 4% in 2022 to 8% in 2024 and is expected to reach 10-15% by 2026, but Max still maintains its dominance. However, new pipelines like combining Unreal Engine plus Blender or Houdini for procedural workflows are bypassing Max, especially in real-time visualization, AR/VR, and interactive projects. Many studios now adopt a hybrid workflow, Max for precise modeling, Blender for scatter and procedural tasks, and Unreal for final output. Future outlook until 2030, Max remains heavily tied to the architectural market, which is still growing. With digital twins, AR/VR, the metaverse, and increasing demand for high-quality visualization in AEC, Max can maintain its position. A reasonable prediction, by 2030, Max could hold around 40-50% of ArchViz market share if Autodesk accelerates innovation and the third-party ecosystem stays strong. However, if Blender's growth continues, Max's share may drop below 50%, particularly in medium and small studios. Real migration patterns. Freelancers and small studios often switch to Blender because it's free, rapidly developed, and versatile. Large architecture and AEC firms still rely on Max. Why? Their pipelines are established, asset libraries are massive, compatibility with Revit AutoCAD is critical, and retraining large teams is costly. Many say we can't just switch everything because Blender is cheaper, our pipeline has been built over years. Impact of AI. Autodesk is gradually integrating AI, like AI-driven real-time rendering in 3ds Max 2026, which in some cases reduces scene times by up to 40%, and generative tools in Fusion/Forma. However, Blender and Houdini have moved faster. Internal AI denoising, generative tools in geometry nodes, and a vibrant open source community producing new AI add-ons daily. If Autodesk implements AI more deeply, e.g. auto modeling, smart scatter, or AI-assisted rigging, Max can stay competitive. Otherwise, AI may accelerate migration away from Max. In 2026, 3D Max is still the king of ArchViz, but its crown is starting to wobble. Its future depends on Autodesk's speed of innovation and the architectural market's loyalty to traditional tools. Even if its market share declines, Max remains a core part of the DNA of a generation of CG artists and architects. Section 10. 3ds Max is not just software, it's a generation. And now we've reached the end of this historical journey. 3ds Max is not just software, it's an inseparable part of 3D history. From DOS and modular tools in the 90s, to the revolutionary Modifier Stack in 1996, to the golden era of ArchViz in the 2000s with Vray and Corona, and all the way to today, where it still holds 59% of the global ArchViz market. A whole generation of architects, ArchViz artists, CG artists, gamers and designers from 2010 grew up with Max. Many created their first 3D model in the 3D editor on DOS, rendered their first photorealistic image with Vray, and filled their first buildings with ForestPack and RailClone. Max has become part of their professional DNA, habits, shortcuts, workflows, even the nostalgia of opening the Modifier Stack. Tools come and go. Maya, Cinema 4D, Houdini, Blender, each has taken its share and changed the game. But the paradigms remain. The Modifier Stack is still one of the best procedural, history-based systems for hard surface modeling and architecture. The third-party ecosystem, plugins, render engines, and asset libraries remains irreplaceable for large-scale projects. Workflows and habits built on years of experience don't change overnight. In 2026, 3ds Max is still the king of architecture, but its crown is starting to wobble. Blender is rapidly closing in with its free availability and geometry nodes, and AI is changing everything. Yet even if its market share drops, and even if a new generation starts more with Blender, Max will remain a part of the 3D story, a classic tool that trained generations and shaped the industry. So if you're still working with Max, know that you are not alone. And if you've migrated, know that the software remains a part of your professional past. Ultimately, 3D isn't about tools, it's about creating worlds. Max was one of the best tools that made this possible. Finally, I'm excited to hear your personal experiences with 3Ds Max, the first moments that thrilled you, the challenges you faced, and the memories you'll never forget. Your stories are not only inspiring for me, but also for all the other learners in this community. Please share them in the comments and keep this conversation alive. Until the next video, stay creative and keep building worlds.